Hello, my name is Jojima, and I am a PhD candidate in art history at the Graduate Center CUNY, specializing in modern and contemporary Latin American art. I am also assistant curator at American Society and a teaching fellow at Baruch College. Before I begin my lecture, I would like to thank Bernardo Mosqueira and Mariano López Seoane, the curators of the exhibition Eros Rising, and Olivia Casas and Lucy Hunter for the invitation to give a lecture on a theme pertinent to the exhibition at the Institute for Studies on Latin American Art, ISLAA. Thank you. On October 21st, 1983, giant paper currency, they were 180 by 80 centimeters, began to fall from the sky on Avenida Rio Branco at Cinelândia Square, one of the most important public squares in Rio de Janeiro. Cars honked because of the confusion caused by the money rain, as people on the ground rushed to collect the bills and applauded at each falling one. The next day, newspapers in Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo published articles revealing the names of the people responsible for this action, artists Márcia Pinheiro and Ana Cavalcante. Collaborators on this piece, titled Chuva de Dinheiro, which translates to money rain, they sought to bring art to the streets, to interact directly with the public, and to comment on the status of Brazilian currency, cruzeiro, during a moment of rampant inflation, as they noted that the work was about a, quote, manifestation to revitalize the cruzeiro, end quote. An artist friend, Ricardo Balsbaum, has stated that Chuva de Dinheiro is a critique of the art market system due to the artwork creation and distribution outside of gallery spaces, thus countering a trend in the 1980s art market that privileged large-scale expressionist paintings. I read this work as an intervention with the potential of implicating passers-by in a system of desire and consumption. In a time of hyperinflation, when people lost purchasing power, the work parodied the dream of being caught in a money rain or being flooded with cash, something which would allow for the acquisition of goods. In the nascent neoliberalism of the 1980s, the access to industrialized consumer goods granted citizenship status in some cases, and also a possibility for a subjectivity that is informed by consumerism. And here I'm thinking about Paul Preciado's ideas on industries such as fashion, pornography, and the pharmaceutical industry, all of which have the potential of producing subjects. And this presentation is going to be focused on pornography. The interest in issues of desire and consumerism permeates the work of Márcia Pinheiro, who is later known as Márcia X, and she's the focus of this presentation. In her work from the 1980s and 1990s, the artist appropriates consumer goods, including Barbie dolls, dildos, fur, and soap, among other objects, to create transgressive and yet very playful combinations and situations that challenged conservative values in Brazilian society, especially in what concerns the body and sexuality. In this presentation, I will first discuss eroticism and pornography, followed by an analysis of 3 artworks by Márcia X to argue that the artist embraces obscenity to challenge systems of representations, while paving way to create new subjectivities and experiences. So I first look at what distinguishes both genres, pornography and erotica, to then analyze the artist's works and to understand ultimately what is an explicit body or an explicit action doing. Thinking about the erotic, the curators of Eros Rising, Mariano and Bernardo, developed an open idea of the term in their essay for the exhibition, which draws from artist Leonor Sfini's thinking of painting. According to Fini, eroticism is something related to sensuality in form and not in the content of a work. Eroticism would relate to the viewer's senses and cause scopophilic pleasure, and scopophilia is the pleasure of looking. The curators creatively expanded this line of thinking, to imagine multifarious erotic experiences, from cosmic encounters to mythology. And indeed, their exhibition brings precisely this understanding with a selection of works that evoke erotic experience and imagination. A central issue when we talk about eroticism is its opposition with pornography, which is an artificial division that establishes what is obscene or not. In other words, what is allowed to be displayed in public and what should be hidden from public view. The curators insightfully mentioned in their essay that such difference between porn and erotica is reductive and even moralistic, something that I completely agree. As an example, they mentioned a 1972 essay by Marta Traba titled Erotismo y la Comunicación, in which the critic draws a straight line between these two genres, decrying pornography and celebrating erotica. This binary thinking, as expressed by Traba, is determined by a long history of philosophical texts, museological practices, art historical essays, and even law that opposed art and pornography, with the later one considered as lacking artistic merit. Such distinction is connected to a Eurocentric and classist division between high art from other forms of culture, often considered low. And this is something that Amalia Ziv explains in her book Explicit Utopias. Thus, when artists embrace the obscene and the pornographic in their works, they not only challenge this historical tradition, but they also create works that can be read as political strategies to undo given systems of representation while creating new possibilities for the body, for sexuality, and pleasure. In Latin America, artists and collectives embracing the obscene include the Brazilian porn art movement, the Peruvian Grupo Chaclacayo, the Chilean Llegas del Apocalipsis, among others. These groups asserted their gender and sexual dissidence and proposed new forms of existence as they challenged sexual normativity, religion, and other forms of oppression. So now I'm going to turn to the analysis of Márcia X's works to make sense of the subversive pornography that she creates. In 1985, Márcia X collaborated with the poet Alex Hamburger, who was her partner at the time, to create the performance Cellophane Motel Suite, which took place at a fashion mall in Rio de Janeiro on the occasion of a book launch. For the performance, Márcia X created a non-garment utilizing two plastic bags. One of them was totally transparent, which was painted red in specific parts to cover her pubic region and breasts, as we can see on the image on the right. And this was covered by a black plastic bag. So the performance comprised of Alex Hamburger reading poems while cutting parts of the outer layer of Márcia X's garment. So the action slowly began to reveal her body in a similar gesture to Yoko Ono's cut piece. When the artist began to show her entire naked body, security guards shut down the event at gunpoint. The piece touches upon the dynamic of concealment and unveiling of the body. As the artist became naked, she destabilized basic social norms that established that people should cover themselves. Even more daring is for a woman to display her naked and her non-idealized body in public space, even though this is acceptable if they do so in the pages of erotic magazines, which are meant to be later consumed privately by men. According to Michael Warner, clothing is a form of language used publicly. And here we can also think about helioitisicas parangolés, which function to communicate color and form. But by removing her clothes and exposing her privacy in public, Márcia X subverts deeply established conventions between public and private and communicates the centrality of the body and forms of embodiment in her practice. In the early 1990s, Márcia X began the series Fábrica Falos, which lasted until 2004. These works utilize sex shop bought rubber penises, or dildos, to which she adorns with vast array of paraphernalia. For instance, the work on the left, she added doll's arms to two dildos which embrace each other, which suggests gay sex, and also is reminiscing Lygia Clark's work, The I and the You, which invites two people to explore each other's bodies, and as they have their faces covered. The work in the middle resembles a modified sword to which the artist added a dildo, and this whole composition gains a very hieratic quality at the same time that it is transformed into a different kind of sex toy. And the work on the right is a dildo that looks luxurious and sensual with a fur coat and the Playboy bunny logo on the top. In these works, the artist played with the sex toys as if they were children's toys. Márcia X has claimed to have converted them from a pornographic object to a child's object and vice versa, creating an antagonism that challenged social conventions. By utilizing these objects, the artist also asserts her desire and suggests different forms of self-satisfaction through play. The industrially fabricated dildos refer to mass-produced pleasures, especially those generated through pornography. Even though I will not define porn here, I can characterize it as a form of codification of sex that follows the industry's profit-driven interests. Conventional porn is a form of normative representation of sex that also has a pedagogical function. According to Robin Zhang, pornography acts as the primary means for one's exploration and formation of their sexual identity, giving them vocabulary and references for their sexual life. By embracing a pornographic object and transforming it into an artwork, Márcia X is undoing a commodified sexual practice while asserting herself as a sexual subject and proposing new forms of play. The last work I'm going to discuss is Caminhas Sutrinhas from 1995. A pun on the term Kama Sutra, the ancient Indian text on the art of living, which includes teachings on love and sex positions. The word Kama is homophone with the Portuguese word cama, which means bed. The installation comprises of dozens of miniature beds, each one with a mattress, sheets, and pillow, and on top of each bed, several naked and headless dolls are connected to each other through electric wires. The dolls are placed in positions that resemble sexual acts, as we can see in this slide. The viewers can press a pedal on the gallery floor, which then activates all of the dolls to move on their beds, enacting the sex act. While the dolls interact, the Disneyland song It's a Small World plays on the background. As with the previous work from the artist, this installation merges pornographic and children's references, two realms that are not meant to be together. The playful dimension of the work, however, is followed by a critique of pornography's mechanization of sex. In the 19th century, Kama Sutra came to be understood in the Western world as a pedagogy for sexuality, which would parallel pornography in its visual and verbal description of sex acts. In Márcia X's works, these Caminhas Sutrinhas also function as a teaching of unorthodox acts. The toys are not only genderless because they lack head and clothing, but also they are practicing a threesome, countering the idea that sex is only made by couples. The headless dolls remind us that sex is a full bodily practice, but they may also symbolize the empty and canned practice in conventional pornography. Just like porn, the sex scene is mechanical and on demand, as it requires the viewer to activate the installation, implicating them in the action as viewers of pornography. I would like to conclude with a few thoughts about play and humor in the work of Márcia X. So, by exploring playfulness in unconventional representation of sex, the work invites sexual imagination, laughter, and even scopophilia, all of which have the potential of affecting viewers' bodies into a sensual experience. Thank you.